Hi there, it's Tracy DeVette from tracydevette.com, and that's spelled with a W, not a V. So in this very quick video, I just want to go through something that's been on my heart. Obviously, I have people asking me questions all the time, and I thought this is one that I would answer. And this is, should I divorce my spouse? And that is quite a big loaded question. And I have to explain the point of view that I come from. So I come from divorced parents. My parents divorced when I was 13. And unfortunately, my first marriage ended in divorce as well and involved children. So I know what it's like, and I'm old enough now to see with myself, see how my parents have ended up, seen how other people who've divorced have ended up in their sort of 70s and 80s, and what's happened to the children who are now all adults, and what's happened to them within all of that time frame. And so I think I can give quite a unique perspective on this going forward. So what do I do when somebody says they think they want to get divorced? Well, the first thing I look at is, obviously, if there's any abuse going on, abuse is an absolute no-no, and it has to get sorted out. So either the partner that's doing the abusing has to agree to go for some extremely effective treatment and acknowledge they've got a problem and want to do something about it, or else it is up to the other partner to get themselves out of that situation, because abuse is just bad for your children long term and bad for you. And if the other person is not going to do anything about it, other than empty promises, of course, because they're always sorry the next day and they're never going to do it again until they do it again, that would be one of the reasons that the few reasons where I would say you need to go ahead with this, probably. Exhaust all the other channels, but start making a plan and make sure that you've got some resources of your own, and you keep it on the down low as well until you've been to see a lawyer. It's worth the money. Invest in that. There are specialist lawyers out there in your own country that'll help you get through this the best way for you. But if that's not the case, and you do have children, I think it's very much a case of both of you need to put your selfishness aside. And it sounds like I'm being really harsh here, but I see the consequences of that. So you're married, you have children, and one of the biggest killers of marriage and romance and relationships is stress. And if you've got young children, or you've had quite a few children, you will know the massive stress and strain and the huge change that it makes in your life. So you can go from being sort of like, self-indulgent, lovey-dovey, plenty of time, do what you like. You've probably both got careers when you got together, and you were both what I call, freestanding people that came together. But as soon as you have children, that dynamic changes completely. And I'm going to use the analogy where dad is the one who's the breadwinner, and mum is normally the one that has to work, but also has to look after the children as well. That might not be the case across the board. Of course, there isn't. There are stay-at-home dads where the dynamic is reversed. But I'm not talking about that today. I'm talking about the sort of more conventional, mum is going to have the responsibility, or most of the responsibility, for looking after the children. She may be expected to go back to work as well, or even want to go back to work to keep herself current in her career. And dad tends to be the one who's going out to work, and because of that, tends to have their own lives, because they're going out to work, they're having external communication and interaction. If they need to work late, they just work late. If they need to go early in the morning, that's what they'll do. And it's normally the mother who has a responsibility to somehow make everything work. If you do have a job, you still need to be at the beck and call of children who are sick or off school or whatever, and it tends to be your responsibility to do most of the housework, the cooking, that kind of thing, being the homemaker as well. So that can be incredibly stressful, especially if you've got children who keep you up at night. You're not sleeping well. And I find that very often the sex life goes out the window. And it's not really because people don't find their partners attractive. It's just that when you become a mother, your children psychologically become your priority. And if that child is in the vicinity, you tend to be keeping an ear out for that child or those children who might need you, because that's what you do when you're a mum, right? So in the middle, in the night, or during the day, you're listening out for a child that needs you. And when you're in that mindset, it's very difficult to switch that off and tune into a partner and be sort of, romantic and sexy and actually relaxed enough to let that happen. And it can set up this dynamic where one partner is normally the one that's still got a life similar to what they had before the children arrived. It's still pushing for that same kind of sort of wild, wherever, whenever, as the mood takes you kind of activity. And the other one is going, oh no, the kids are going to hear, or I'm not shutting the bedroom door because then I can't hear if the baby cries, and I just really don't feel like it. I found that when I was lactating, because I breastfed my children, I didn't really feel like being intimate with my partner, because it was kind of like, this body and these breasts are for that baby that I'm breastfeeding. They're not really there for you to mess with, kind of thing, And I guess that's quite an ancient instinct, because babies, hundreds of years ago, that's all they had was the mother's milk. If they didn't have it, it was a life or death situation. So I guess it's just a very, very strong inbuilt mothering instinct that I guess most of us have. So the relationship can suffer, and it can suffer massively and feel like you've got to disconnect. And then what happens when people aren't having their needs met? So the man or the dad is probably feeling that left out, and he's not part of this, and suddenly his wife is not that engaged in wanting to be intimate or spend time with him or whatever. She's constantly distracted by the children. And the wife is seeing this, well, the guy's not understanding me. He's making all these demands. Can't he see that I'm tired? I'm disinterested. I feel like a blob because the baby, the post-baby fat hasn't gone, and I don't feel sexy, and I don't feel like I want to do this. And he's constantly asking for it. And the more he's asking, the more irritated the wife is getting. And the more irritated the wife is getting, the more the man is feeling left out, pushed away, and like he doesn't matter. And this happens in most relationships. And most relationships can actually recover from that, because if we're all adults about it and we take our selfish little needy wants out of it, you can actually sit down and have a sensible conversation and say, okay, what can we do about this? You're feeling this, I'm feeling that, and how can we change this? So maybe you make one night a week a sexy night, where there's no excuses and you're both looking forward to it or whatever. You promise your partner that you're going to be there and do that, and you show up for it, whether you really like it or not. I'm a great believer in forcing yourself, because you force yourself out of this sort of lassitude that you don't want to do it, and you'll end up enjoying it. So that's my advice on that side, is to go ahead and do that, because it will damage your relationship if you don't. And you might think that your partner will understand and be understanding about it and then know what you're feeling. These are guys. They don't. They really don't. Most of them don't. And even if they try to, there's normally a mismatch between male and female sex drives and the way their sexuality works. And so they actually can't understand it. So make an agreement to once a week at least that you're going to be available to each other. No distractions. Get the TV off. Get your phone out the way. Even if the babies snuffle and move around or whatever, 10, 15, 20 minutes. You're done. So it's not a huge portion of time. And as you get into it, you can make this more and more exciting because you can look forward to it. You can start bringing the romance back in a bit, and I don't know, leaving a rose at the side of the bed or a chocolate, or just making the bed, or just brushing your hair that day or whatever. There are all these little things you can do to turn the tide back from where it's going to slip down that slippery slope, and then it's much more difficult to put it back from there. So I'm a firm believer that if you have children, it's up to you to make your marriage work. And although it's very easy to blame the partner if your marriage is getting into this sort of muddy waters where it's not, you feeling dissatisfied and unhappy, it's very easy to look at the partner. But I can assure you that there are things that you can do to make the situation better. And if you change your mindset into going, look, I'm going to throw everything I've got at this. I'm not going to let this just slide away. And I'll tell you why you don't want to do that. And I see this all the time. So the first marriage, you say it's all you ever dreamed of, possibly, or there's a reason why you've got married, right? And it's normally some sort of you have some sort of idea in your head of what it's going to be like, and the reality might be very different to that. But there was a dream there was an idea, there was a hope. And it's when these dreams and hopes seem to be absolutely dry husks that people start to think about giving up on their marriage. And I'd like to encourage you that these are stages that you go through. Nearly everybody does. Some people handle it better than others. That comes down to all sorts of reasons. And it doesn't necessarily have to be one partner that keeps giving in to the other just to make it work. In fact, that's not a particularly healthy dynamic, because the other person is not learning. You're pandering to their whims and they're just being that same person. So if they're a nice person, it's somebody you want to live with for the rest of your life, that's great. But if not, we tend to be stubborn about who we are. And the more somebody tries to change us or challenge us on it, the more we're going to dig our heels in. And it tends to be more men that dig their heels in than women about these things. So you need a different approach, ladies. You need to do this properly in a different way. No nagging, no shouting, no demanding, because that's just making them dig their heels in more. There are much better techniques that you can learn if you don't know them to basically improve the situation. So what happens if you get divorced? And people tend to think that, well, I'm going to get rid of this partner because they're not doing this, that, and the other, and they're not who I thought they were. See, there's a dream that's been shattered right there. They're not the person who I thought they were. They're not taking the kids out as soon as they get home from work and going to the park. They don't really want to do that. They've said no. I've had the kids all day. I need a break from them. This is just not working. So you start going into your defense mode. And of course, the man can't really understand it. And we give them too much credit, I think. Sorry, guys, I'm not bashing you, but I just know how men and women think differently about things. And I'm guessing that if your marriage is in a bit of a tiz, that will be why, because there are obviously some men who are way more sensitive, but they normally have good marriages because theirs don't get into these backwaters where the problems are. They've learned how to sort them out from early on. And there's always hope. There is always hope. As I say, even if you're with an abusive partner, you need to make a plan to get yourself away from them, but understand that they can be helped if they're willing to be helped. And that's where having hypnosis and hypnotherapy can sort out a lot of crap in their past, because that's why they're behaving towards you as they are. It's based on their own model of what they think is appropriate behavior or not. And they've normally come from a place of hurt and a place of disappointment and a place of really negative learning. And that, of course, can be changed. So don't give up hope on that. But I would say that if the abuse is going on, you need to make a plan and get yourself out of that situation. So what happens if you leave this current partner and they are the father of your children? And one of the things I hear women saying, oh, well, he just doesn't spend enough time with them, or he just doesn't want to look after them. He doesn't want to get that involved. He's leaving it up to me. Let me ask you this. If you leave your current spouse, are you expecting to have a relationship with somebody else? Are you? If you are expecting to have a relationship with somebody else, how much compromise are you going to have to live with somebody else who is not the father of those children? He might be nice to them. He might spend a bit more time with them, but you can't expect him to do that because they're not his children. So you don't have the same expectations. And because you don't have the same expectations, you don't place as much strain on the second relationship, provided you actually find somebody who falls in love with you and, very, very importantly, is nice to your children. And I would say that to any woman out there, do not get with a guy who does not like your children, because that's just throwing them under the bus. And it's really terrible situation, because you'll end up alienating your children, and your children are always your children. Partners can come and go. So that's another nugget of advice in there. If the person does not get on well or does not want children in their lives, don't sell your kids out. You're the only mother that they're ever going to have. So don't do that to them. Please don't. It's not fair. They didn't ask to be born. You gave birth to them. You need to woman up, and you need to take that responsibility and make sure that they live in a safe and loving home. So if you think about it, how difficult it is then to find somebody else who's going to love you and like your kids and do all of those things that you're expecting the father of those children to do. So what happens in reality is that you don't have those expectations. When they do show your children some interest or some attention, or want to take them out to the zoo or something like that, you get excited about that, and it becomes a positive thing. You're like, oh, wow, what a nice stepfather. And you're not downing them, because you can't. You can't demand it from them. You can't say, oh, I'm tired, you take the baby. Or, what do you think you're doing playing golf on a Saturday afternoon when I'm stuck home doing the housework and I've got 2 little kids mithering around and getting in my way, and I don't feel like I've got any time to myself, and the things that happen in that situation. So think about it really carefully. If you can approach your partner differently and be appreciative for everything that they do, and you won't have to force yourself here, but I absolutely promise you that it will pay positive dividends. So getting back to the story of actually breaking up, should you or shouldn't you? If there's no abuse and there's no tyranny and there's no sort of, any like really serious reason why you would need to break up. If it's just feeling unhappy, feeling unfulfilled, don't really know what it is, don't think that this is going to work out or whatever, your expectations are what's coloring how you see the relationship. And if you look at relationships that have lasted the test of time, so they're couple still together, they've been on a rocky road, but they've kept their eye on the prize, and that's making it through to the end, still being a couple. How amazing is that for your adult kids? How amazing is that for the grandchildren that are going to be there? So it's just granny and grandpa, nanny and granddad, instead of this one and their partner or new wife, and this one and their new husband. And then it becomes that becomes diluted. It's not just grandparents anymore, it's all sorts of sets of grandparents. And you can see how that's not very good to build a stable and strong family. So my plea to you is to try and hang in there and change the way that you do things and change the way that you think about things, because I guarantee if you leave this situation, the next one that you're going to go into, and that's the dream that most people have, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to get rid of this partner and find somebody better. You're going to have to compromise so much more with that second or third or even fourth relationship. Why not just do it now? Because this is the ideal relationship to compromise in. And also understand that there is effective help. Now, I discovered Dr. John Gottman and the Gottman Institute that is attached, I think, to the University of Seattle. And his research into couples goes back absolute decades. I would say that him and his team are probably at the forefront of this research, and they have a specific program and specific things that you can do that they've observed over the years that work in relationships, and the things that actually tear relationships apart. And I'm going to be sharing some of those things with you. I actually did train with them years ago, and so I will be putting those hints and tips in here so that you can fix your relationship, because this one where you're the parents of the children, this is the most important relationship that you're both going to have in your lives. If you speak to people who are divorced many years down the line, and I'm talking probably 15, 20 years down the line, most regret it. And most say that, yes, if only I had been a bit more like this, if only they had been a bit more like that, this could have still been a relationship. Because everybody knew that you get with, nobody's perfect, and they will have problems of their own that you'll need to live with. and compromise with, and have a lot less expectation of their reactions and interactions with your children than what you're expecting from the father of your children. So this is my video for today, is should you stay in a relationship? I'm saying if it's not abusive and it's not, you're not being financially undermined, some people do have ulterior motives for these kind of things, but if it's just the way that you're feeling and it's due to stress with money, stress with childcare, stress or just dissatisfaction with life in general, or with your partner because they're not perfect, there is something you can do about it. And I really, really urge you to find out what those things are and to do them. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching as always. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And the hints and tips will be coming in forthcoming videos.